today we have Peng as the speaker, and we have also Enrico. Where is Enrico? Okay, there. So Peng is the co-founder of Match.com. I think you know Match.com, right? The dating site, the very famous dating site. And he was also in YY, one of the very famous tech startup in China. And he was also in the board of Singapore Economic Review. And now he's the director of Mongshow Venture, who invests in Series A company. Is it that right? D also. D also. The Series A, Series B companies. So give an applause to Peng.
Hi everyone. I don't have any slides. Can take notes if you want. I have a very simple job here. You should know more about what to do for your company after you leave than before when you got here, right? Than right now. What I found, let me start with a story on one of my visits last year to an incubator somewhere in Southeast Asia. And why I think this particular topic is very important for everyone here. So I went to this incubator and I spent a day there. And I met with a lot of different companies, almost all of them. And you know, it was interesting at first. High energy. Everyone was all pumped up and all very excited about business. I talked one after another. What's the market size? What's the strategy? Blah, blah. And at the end of it, I was first of all energized by the sort of the raw talent and the can-do-itness kind of entrepreneurs. But I was actually very sad. There were like maybe 50 to 100 people there. They were all pushing very hard. And about 80% of the deals I saw there would not be fundable by businesses. 80%. Right? Why? It's actually a very simple reason. Their target market is not big enough. So let me first tell you a little bit about VC funds. And then we'll go into the different stages of startups and how you look at what VCs are looking for. And the reason why you care about what VCs are looking for, this doesn't work. The reason why you care about what VCs are looking for is that we want to make money. Right? So we're looking for things that make sure the company makes money. Right? So if you don't make money, you don't have a business, you're wasting your time. So let me give you a little bit of secret sauce here. Most VCs, a lot of VCs won't tell you this stuff, but if you read enough, if you dig enough papers and books, you'll find out this. There is a strategy around how, so forget the early stage seed funds first, right? There are lots of them out here and they're doing a lot of good work. But let me tell you how the Series A, Series B guys think about this. The ones that have done it for 1-2 decades, right? Or 3 decades. The Sequoias and Andreessen. So actually, some of them are actually not the best model for this, but the traditional Series A guys, which some of them used to be, do the following. They have a fund, let's say it's a $100 million fund. They invest in about 15 to 20 deals. And each deal they invest in, they want to see a possible exit of $500 million to $1 billion. Right? The market cap needs to be around that. So if you just given that, right? Just given that, and there's a whole lot of game theory about the returns of the fund because of the investment strategy, etc. But general rule is every deal you invest in as a Series A, Series B fund, you need to see $500 million to $1 billion exit. Right? So if you don't have a market cap that can support that kind of valuation, the traditional VCs won't invest. Right? You can get money from elsewhere, but the traditional VCs will just not invest in it because it's off strategy. So the first question you've got to ask yourself when you start a company, right, is What's the market size? And therefore, and the other thing is, what's the margins? What's the gross margins of the business? And therefore, what kind of valuation can this company be? I'm not saying that you should not start a company where there's a market size of 5 million. I'm not saying that. If you're passionate about doing that, go do that. But do not expect a VC to fund it. Right? You can make money. Right? If you can generate $5 million a year of revenues, every year you can and let's say $2 million of profit. Every year you can buy a Ferrari. Right? Who's to say that's not a good thing? It's just not VC fundable. That's all. Not a value judgment. So number one, you got to remember what is the market size. Right? The first basic question. So that was what's missing. I was totally blown away because this is an incubator with mentors and executives helping out, etc. And nobody asked that simple question: will VCs fund this deal? Right? And so I thought about how you should visualize this process of funding and your journey to creating value in your startup. So one simple way, it's not the best way, but this one simple way I've thought of is like you're building a house. Right? So the market cap analysis is like the foundation. You lay the foundation. If there's a big enough market cap, you can possibly build a business to go after the market. The second piece is to understand, what is the first floor and what is the second floor? What is the first floor about? What is the second floor about? There is this concept I call phasing. Sort of derived from the sales learning curve stuff that was written about a decade ago. Sales learning curve, the guy's name is Mark Leslie, if you want to look it up, it's HBR article. Can you hear me back there? Is it okay?
Yeah, closer.
Closer to the mic, okay. So, there are two phases to a startup. The first phase is what I call the startup phase. It's a phase where you have a theory about the kind of products that will satisfy some needs in the market and how we could go about doing that. So you have a thesis. The thesis is, if I build this, I can make money in a repeatable way like that. So the second phase is, after you've proven it, you pump in the money and you crank. So it's a crank-up phase. Right? This is very, very, very important because you need to understand which phase you're in your startup. Most of you here are probably less than 1 year old companies. Who's got a 2-year-old company here? Okay, there's a few of you. So you might have already gotten to your crank-up phase. I don't know. In theory, you're supposed to be able to get through your phase 1 in about a year plus or minus. Right? If it takes more than that, that means there was a mistake. Some of the theory is wrong. You're correct. So the purpose of building the first floor is to run that experiment on your thesis that there is a business to be built. Right? And the seed investors, if they are thoughtful seed investors, they're thinking, I'm paying you to run the experiment. Right? The experiment could fail. Your thesis could be wrong. This is science 101, right? You have a thesis or hypothesis. You create an experiment. You run the experiment. Right? If the experiment fails, you shut it down. If it succeeds, you can go on to building a manufacturing plant. Right? So the first floor, when you build the first floor, you're effectively building the experiment and running the experiment to prove your point. What do you want out of the experiment? Most of you, anyone doing a clean tech startup? Or a biotech, or one clean tech? Biotech? Okay, no biotech, good. Biotech takes a lot of money. So what you want to do is run the experiment so that you get data. What data do you need? Actually, some of this even applies to clean tech and biotech. You have customers. You want to understand how the customers engage. What's the cost of acquisition of customers? So you need a CAC number. you will need to understand what the lifetime value of a customer is. So the experiment needs to be run for a while, until you start losing customers. The ARPU, what you generate, what kind of revenues you generate from the customer, you need to know that. The virality, each customer brings you how many new customers. The engagement and the, there's one other, engagement and retention, right? All these numbers are growth hacking numbers. If you don't understand what they are, you need to look up these numbers and figure them out. So you're running the experiments, you see all the numbers happening, and you need to see them going up in the right direction. The reason you want to run this is because you want to keep these data, is because when you come to build the second story of the company, the first question a VC like myself, which is a post-seed VC, will ask you is, show me the data that you have a repeatable model. Right? If you don't have a repeatable model, you've got to go back to step one and try and figure out the repeatable model. The reason for post-seed investment is very easy. It's to help you crank, give you the cash to crank up your engine. Right? You build a production plan, now you need to get the materials to sell it to a production plan to create products. Right? So phase one is to run the experiment. Phase two is to crank up the experiment. What do phase one investors, people at phase zero trying to look at phase one, what do they look for? They look for basically two things. Right? Actually three. The market size. Forgot about market size. That's the application. If you don't have the market size, you don't care. There are angel investors who might be okay with getting a $20 million a year revenue company, right? Because they can collect dividends, etc. All the restaurants investors, all kinds of people do that. So it is possible to get seed money to do that kind of business. The problem with that is, number one, they don't filter this, so they don't tell you, hey, by the way, you can't get funding from a VC later on. And number two, if you can't get funding from a VC, you're dependent on them to support you, the angel investors to support you all the way through. And typically, they don't have lots and lots of money to do that. So you're scaling down your vision of what you can do. So make sure when you get the angel investments, you're thinking in terms of, can this angel investor put in enough money to get me to finish the experiment, right? And then some runway to raise money. What you need to do is give them a sense that this market size is big enough. Number two, give them a sense that your vision of how to address this market size, your product, your delivery system, your sales strategy, your marketing strategy, all makes sense. The good news is you just need to talk, right? There's nothing else to do but talk, there's no product. And then the third thing is they're going to look at you as a founder. They're going to invest in you. If they're smart, they'll look at you and they'll invest in you. And I'll give you the two things you need to have at the end of the talk for most investors, Series A, Series B, C, to invest in you. So those are the three things: market size, product, go-to-market, business plan, basically, and number three, yourself. Right? That's what seed is. I'm also a seed. I used to be a seed investor. So that's what I did. Now, once you run the experiment and assume you got results, and you can tell me, oh, you put $1 in this system, I go crank, comes out $3 in 2 months. Right? You know this, and why do you know this? Here's the data, I can show it to you over and over again. And it's a high gross margins business, etc. Right? Once you can do that, you come to someone like me, and there's going to be a lot of people like me in Indonesia very quickly. There are lots of funds being set up right now. And they will look at your data, and if they believe you, right? They believe you've got a working model. Number two, you've got somewhat of an operating team. You've got your sales guy, you've got a marketing guy, got an engineering guy. They look at all that and they go, and then they look at you again and they go, okay, here's the money, right? And then you start cranking. By this time, you have built your first floor and you're cranking your second floor. Right? And the second floor is easy. You start to go into PE growth kind of venture stage where they take a look at growth rates, they take a look at your gross margins, and they go, okay, this company can be worth this much later. So this is almost Wall Street investing. So your first floor, when you build it, when you finish the first floor, you can almost put a roof on it because you're almost ready to go. So those are the stages of doing a startup and what VCs look for in those stages. It's very straightforward. I'll leave you with one more thought on how to think about all this yourself, right? As an entrepreneur. I spent most of my career building companies, not investing in companies. But it's actually very similar. When you build companies, you coach people, you think strategically, you invest in business plans. So it's just a business plan in the company as opposed to somebody else's business plan. So it's very similar, except a lot busier. So two things that helped me a lot as an entrepreneur. And as a result of that, I look for that in entrepreneurs I invest in. The first thing is clarity. Are you clear about what you're doing? I mean, at the detail level. Why are you building a company if no VC is going to ever fund it? Right? Why do you have a business plan that you're executing against, you're spending 60, 80 hours a week when you're not clear if someone's going to fund it later? Right? Do you understand what numbers you need to show future investors in order to get more money to grow the company fast? If you don't, why are you spending all this energy building it? Right? So you've got to be very, very, very clear on what you're doing and why you're doing it. If you take this to the max, right, you keep asking why, to get clarity. As an entrepreneur, you get to a point where you got to say, I believe my life, the purpose of my life is to whatever, right? I would suggest don't forget to do that as you're doing startups, because if you're not clear about that, if you're not clear why you're spending 80 hours, maybe ending up getting divorced from your family, or, don't laugh, this happens, right? Your family better understand what you're doing if you're doing a startup. This is not just for fun, right? This serious stuff is related to why you think you're alive and the purpose in living, right? So you think about that because it relates to the second thing, that why it is critical for entrepreneurs to have, and that's resilience. Right? What happens when the shit hits the fan? Right? Do you run out of the room, or do you get a bucket and come clean up the shit? Right? There are too many people who just are too weak, or they don't know what their purpose is. So when bad things happen, they just give up. Right? I can go over and over again. The first one that I kind of realized, wow, this is kind of really strange because I didn't expect it. One of my first companies I started, fourth or fifth engineer, MIT PhD, smart guy, came in, came to work. After a month, he came to me, hey, my wife wants me to quit. Right? I was putting, why, So he says, well, I put in too much time at work. And he was the one that was putting in like 50 hours a week, right? All of us were doing 80 hours. So I'm thinking, what? And so it is that way, right? They don't have clarity in what they want. So now, every time I hire one of the founders, the early engineers, I talk to them, I talk to their spouses, and make sure they understand what they're doing, right? They're getting into really, really hard stuff. So there's no resilience in that. It's 50 hours at work a week, and you go, oh, that's too much work. Right? maybe it's a priority issue, maybe it's not a resilience issue, but it is well, to me it was a resilience issue because you can't do like 50 hours a week and expect to build any kind of startup, right? So, startup, frankly, not just startup, anything you do world class is not about balance, it's about craziness, it's about extremes, right? And if you want to do a startup, be prepared to act like crazy. Right? Not in terms necessarily of crazy, but in terms of how much time and energy you spend on something. It's almost impossible to have a world-class anything, tennis player, golf, CEO, president, and have a balanced life. Right? If you look at the world leaders, right? Every one of them, their hair, if it doesn't fall off, all become white, right? Very quickly. Right? Obama, everyone. So it's a very stressful life, to lead, to go to the extreme and to create world-class stuff. Right? So you better make sure you understand why, you have the clarity of why, and you have the belief that you have the resilience to go through all the tough stuff, and not just you, your family. And so that's my conversation for today. I much rather spend a lot of time answering questions and extrapolating from what you're thinking about. So should I just stop here and you got questions? And you can start the ball. If you're too shy to ask the question, I think you can pass the note too. But you guys are entrepreneurs, you cannot be shy. Okay?
Right. So do you want to answer the question first, or will you go? I think we can go first. You guys can
There's a question.
So okay, sure. So maybe you can just speak up.
So thank you very much for the opportunity. It's really insightful to hear your presentation just now. My name is Ivan. I'm running a startup company called Avina. We are focusing on clean tech and water technology. I have 3 short questions. The first thing is mentioning about seed investment. I think running a startup in Indonesia is still a lot of challenges that we need to face, and the climate is really, I think it's not there yet. So when it comes to finding seed investors related to clean tech or water, what kind of resources or the kind of people that we should look for when we would like to really finding the right seed investor for these 2 fields? That's my first question. And the second one is, well, Indonesia is a developing country. A lot of people say that in 2030 we're going to be like 7th largest country in the world, blah blah. So we see that there's a lot of opportunity going on in Indonesia at the moment. So, and it feels like there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of startups that we could do. But at the same time, we need to focus, right? We need to, as you say, clarity is very important. So my question is, how could we actually streamline and focusing our energy to focus just only the things that really matter to us, and really make it big. So because we are living in a country that the opportunity is, I think, still abundant, although there's a lot of challenges. And the third one, which actually related to the second one, is I don't know how far you have been observing Indonesia, but I would like to know from your own opinion and your own point of view, how do you see the startup industry in Indonesia? What kind of challenges, and how do you see the potential of the startup industry in Indonesia? Thank you very much.
So let me start with the last question, because that will actually help answer the first question also. I spent most of my adult life as an entrepreneur in the US, and then I spent about 3+ years in Beijing as a VC. I also invested as both a VC and an angel investor before that, before about 8 years So as an entrepreneur. So why did I come, actually that's one of your questions. Why did I come back to Southeast Asia? So one of the things I did with the government in Singapore and with Singtel also is actually help develop an ecosystem, a startup ecosystem there. We did something like what Bloomberg did in New York, except at a smaller scale. I think last year there were 4 or 5 unicorns in companies that became unicorns in Singapore. And you know, people go with overnight success, but that took 15 years of economic development to get there. So as a result of that activity, I actually was familiar with the numbers, number of startups, etc. in Singapore and then also in the other cities around. And I realized that something happened. And what was happening looked like China about 10, 15 years ago. Right? There's a bunch of people that believe there's a lot of opportunities to go after and decided to build companies. And frankly, there was maybe about, my guesstimate 2-3 years ago was about $0.25 billion in capital, 250 million in capital in just the seed funding in the region. So with that level of funding, there was still no post-seed funds. So I went, okay, very nice opportunity. Number one, to come home. Right? I've never been able to be a professional anything in my home, right? Which is Southeast Asia. And then number two, it's a chance to make money here. And this looks like China. All the VCs that went to China in the early 2000s, unless they were total idiots or totally dishonest, made money. And even if you're dishonest, you make money. So you can tell from the numbers that big things are going to happen around here, right? And I think last year started to show everyone that this is real, right? $100 million into Tokopedia, right? $250 million into Grab Taxi. The people don't throw around that kind of money unless they believe some real value is being created, right? So we haven't seen our exits yet, but it's just a matter of time, right? Yeah, the other part that is very important to me is, as I look at China build up the last 10 years, I noticed something very, very different. The entrepreneurs, when I first went to China, were very unsure of themselves, lacked confidence, right? But once they saw, the Chinese companies were just as good as the American companies, etc. In fact, the biggest tech IPO in the world is not American, right? When they started to see they can build world-class stuff, the confidence in the entrepreneurs just went up. They stopped looking at other people. They started to think about what they should be doing. Right? I want to see that for our part of the world. Right? I think this is going to come. It's going to come soon. So that's what I think about ecosystems. It's still early days. The Series A funds are just starting to get going. But in this tech ecosystem, things happen really fast, right? 5 years, 10 years, we have a Baidu-sized company, right? And we're going to see that. The first question about clean tech, it's a bit harder. If you look at value creation on the planet, right, a lot of it revolves around computing. There's a McKinsey report that basically says most of the value creation, economic value creation on the planet in the next 10 years is going to come from computer-related stuff. So if you're doing something else, like clean tech or biotech, the monies, the capital are not focused on that area. For whatever reason, Singapore spent a lot of money in biotech and clean tech. There's almost no output coming from it. In terms of value generation. Singapore barely spent any money in the internet sector. And all the unicorns, all the foreign investments all come from that sector. So you've picked a challenging sector, right? So just understand that it goes back to why you're doing it, your meaning of your life, the meaning of your life, the purpose of your life, and why you're doing this, right? It's not always to do with money. So it's fine. You just have to know it's harder as a think tank. Funding sources. Again, the Singapore government is pumping a lot of money into that. So one of the easiest places to raise money for clean tech is Singapore. I know a lot of families here setting up funds, but they're setting up tech funds. You know, if you do clean tech, I don't know what traction you're going to get. You can try. I think there's going to be about $500 million of capital coming into both the seed and the post-seed stages in Indonesia by Indonesians. I know some of the groups that are doing it. So you're going to see a lot of money coming to support entrepreneurs. It's just that not a lot of it is going to support clean tech. You just have to be aware of that. Don't think of it as Indonesia, think of it as a region. Nobody we talk to that thinks of it as just a country-centric kind of business. Well, not nobody. It's very hard to build a country-centric business and have that kind of output, the kind of results that we're expecting. So the Indonesian companies are looking at going to Philippines, Thailand. The Manila companies are looking at coming here, etc. So you know, it becomes regional and then it becomes global. I would like to see in the next 5 years a few globals coming out of this part of the world. Not just small regional companies, but you know, $1 billion revenue companies coming out of this part. I think it's going to happen. So that's the second question, the first question. What's the second question? It's about focus. I don't know. This might sound good, but just do it.
Yeah. Any other question? Yeah.
My question is simple, looking simple maybe. When you mentioned about the valuation of for a company, during a startup, how do you value the company for an investment? When everything is still negative. It just come out from experiment, where the proof or the revenues have not, they're still in theory, it's not yet produced. How do you evaluate that?
So, as an entrepreneur, I've done this many times, raised money, and then as a VC, I've seen the flip side of that experience. I'm going to tell you what the experience is, and I can tell you one thing. The answer is we are open. We'll let the market tell us what it's worth. Right? The question is, how much do you think the valuation is? Right? The VCs, the smart VCs will ask you, what are you looking for in valuation? The smart answer is, don't answer the question. Right? Now, if I ask you that question and you answer that question, hey, you might be shown the door. Right? You know why? Because you're not experienced in doing this. Right? Even if you want $50 million pre-money, why should you get $50 million pre-money? Right? What is the financing model that gives you $50 million? You might be able to come up with one, but the VC that's looking at a deal might have a different model. Right? And you have no idea what the industry average is because you don't finance deals day after day after day. Right? So you don't know. You can make it up, but you're going to look either too greedy or too naive. Right? What are the chances that you pick the number that the VC is thinking? 0. Right? So don't answer the question. And really let the market tell you. This last 6 months, I've had at least half a dozen to a dozen entrepreneurs come and say, oh, it's worth 15 million or 20 million, 5 million, whatever it is. Then we go, okay, never mind, it's too expensive. And we find out they got funded for half of that. Right? So we turned down the deal because we thought we thought it was too expensive, number one. But number two, if we were wrong, and it's actually worth what we thought it was, half the price, then the other problem is the entrepreneur doesn't know what he's doing. So why should we invest in an entrepreneur who doesn't know what he's doing? So there's a no-win situation.
Yeah, but so what should we say if you ask us that question?
I gave the answer.
Just don't answer.
Make an offer.
Ah, I see. Interesting. Yeah.
Hello, good evening everyone, good evening Mr. Peng. My name is dari. I am a co-founder of Kirim Ini. Kirim Ini is like Kirim Ini. Kirim Ini is the online logistic malls. What we do is we connect people and businesses with the logistic service providers, as simple as that. And I have 3 questions for you. The first one is how many percentage do we have to calculate in our revenue plan if we are in huge market? Like I am in logistic market. Indonesia's logistic market was up to $131.4 billion last year, and I was thinking how many percentage can I put? And the second question is that what makes you decide to invest in a startup? I mean, what do you see if you want to invest in a startup? And then the third one is, what kind of personality traits are you looking for in founders? Thank you.
Good question.
So first of all, I have to apologize. I don't need to lead up on you on what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. And I'm not beating you up, just trying to make a point here. There are no dumb questions, but there are lazy questions. And I'm not saying your questions are lazy even. I'm saying if you think about it a little bit more, how do you do market sizing? Right? This is a question that all the MBAs do. Right? All you have to do is just, hey, my MBA friend, how do you do this? Right? Go find out, go figure it out. Right? And I actually don't know the answer to your question, right? But it's easy. If I needed to answer that question, there's half a dozen people I can call up. Number 2.
What makes you decide to invest in a startup?
So all those things I mentioned in my talk, market sizing, etc.
I mean, what do you see, like, okay, this startup, I want to invest in this startup. Like, this kind of startup has to prove something to you that the business model works, since you are in service A and B.
So I'll cut to the chase and go, the thing I invest in is the entrepreneur. Right? All those things I tell you are just a reflection of the entrepreneur. The business model, the running the experiments, the OCD details into the figures, all the numbers. Right? That's all a reflection of the entrepreneur. Right? And if the entrepreneur is good, you figure it out through all the numbers, all the interactions, and the way they talk about why they're doing it. And third one, sorry,
The profile of the founders.
Profiles of the founders.
Personality traits.
Personality
traits
traits.
of the founders.
They're very clear on what they want. They're very resilient. That's basically it, right? But how do you know that, right? So you spend time with them. I spend time with entrepreneurs as well.
Hello, I'm Catherine Chalista from Latvia Production House, and I want to ask, you know that production houses hardly to get money from banks, but we do it, we are social enterprise production house, and so we're trying to get grants from competition. So if we can win, we can also get in recognition. But there are also venture capitalists. I want to ask about how do we can pick a good social venture capital, and what do you suggest for the production house? Thank you.
Okay, so I'm not the right person to talk about how these social enterprise VCs invest, because I actually don't. I know a few of them, but I don't know their processes. So I believe, talking to some of them, is that each one has a different strategy, because they are not just looking for returns, they are looking for some social good that will come out of it. So that social good is an important piece of the evaluation. So I don't know what media does, I don't know what some of the other funds do that's important. But the good news is there are not many of them, so you can talk to everyone. Right? It is difficult because there's a theory in some of these people with money that instead of just giving the money away, they focus on investing it in enterprises that make a difference and are sustainable. So it's a great theory, but how they look at the good they're doing is one way. So I don't know, but
you mentioned earlier about investing in entrepreneur, right? Has there been instances in your experience where you find the characteristic trait in the entrepreneur, but they're just in the wrong business and you like fund them for something else?
no, I don't think so.
So when you mentioned you invest in entrepreneurs, you need both the business and the people. Like you cannot do one without the other.
Yes, that's right. Well, the way I look at it, if the guy is doing something that he shouldn't be doing, he's probably not the right entrepreneur. Because the right entrepreneur will figure it out and go, okay, this is wrong, I should be doing this, I should be doing this other thing. Right?
Okay, I'm actually really interested to learn a bit more about your story when you started Match.com. How did that come about? Like, how did you meet your co-founders? Where did the idea come from? Did you know it was going to be big? Did you know that you were meant to start a dating site? Wow, that's great. That's good. I'm interested in that story.
Okay, I'll try and do it in 5 minutes or less. It's a long story, but I went out to Silicon Valley because I specifically knew I was going to start a company. So I joined a bunch of, by the way, about half of the people that you see are successful entrepreneurs. I think slightly more than half knew they were going to start a company long ago. It's just, they took time. Oh, I need to do my master's. Oh, I need to graduate. You know, and they finally do it in the end. And the other half is just accidental. They meet somebody else who wants to start a company. So I always knew I wanted to start a company. Went to California to do that. So I joined this group called the Software Forum, or Software Entrepreneurs Forum. This no longer exists in the Valley. And there I met Gary Kremen, who's EE Stanford MBA, and he was doing his first startup. Right? And he was really bored. He didn't do the market sizing exercise. Small business. He said, okay, I'm done with this business. So he wanted to start a startup. I also wanted to do one, so we started brainstorming. It took us maybe a year. And what we tried to look for was what we call ridiculous states of the world, where you look at it and you go, this doesn't make any sense at all. And that was the classifieds. The name of our company, Match.com, the parent company of Match.com, was Electric Classifieds Inc., ECI. And what we were trying to do is prevent, during that time, Netscape was a private company. Who knows what Netscape is? Wow, okay, the world has changed. Netscape was still a private company and hadn't gone public. Netscape was Mark Andreessen's first company. We had no idea how big this thing was. In fact, we thought it was just an interesting idea, the internet. It's an interesting idea that might be big, might not be big. But we could build a small dating business. Actually not dating, classifieds business. What our business would do is help you not have a inky finger, because you don't have to look up stuff. Right? It was stupid because all the data is there, but you have to use your eyes to go scan for things you're looking for. So why don't you just put it online, and everyone puts it online. All the newspapers in all the cities put it online, and you can search for stuff. Craigslist. Right? And so we started doing that, and we screwed up in many areas. We had 5 CEOs in the first 6 years. Right? Kills the company. And the only thing that was successful out of that was, oh, and we had a very interesting verticalization of the strategy. So instead of Craigslist, where everything is one website, eBay, everything is on one website. This was in the early 90s, so you could actually get cars.com, houses.com, match.com, and so on. So we did that. Right? So we had lots of now very valuable domains, but we don't own them anymore. So the only one that was successful was Match.com. And in the end, the company wasn't doing well enough. We had to keep going. So we sold Match.com in order to try to grow the rest of the business. And that was the best thing we ever did for Match.com. Because the people who bought it knew what they were doing to build a great company. Today, it's about 850 million in revenues. It's a huge company. It's got lots of, OkCupid, Tinder, all those guys are rich. This is the world's biggest dating site. And I think it's going to be disrupted soon. That's a different story. So that's Mesh. There was a question.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Mr. Peng. My name is JC. I'm an IT professional. And with my friend, planning to start a startup. Basically, it's a business intelligence startup. A business intelligence, a BI.
Yeah.
So basically, what we see that a lot of data coming in from all over the world, from your social media and all that stuff. And I would like to know what's your perspective view about the big data and what's the trend in 2015. Whether big data, smart data, or all that stuff is also becoming something that is lucrative for the venture capitalists to invest, or something like that is going to pass away in a short few years maybe. So I'd just like to know what's your honest opinion about the trend and big data and all that smart data as well. Thank you very much.
First of all, before you start the company, make sure you talk to your spouses, your girlfriends, kids even. Actually, I encourage entrepreneurs to talk to their kids about doing startups. Big data. Big data is something we sort of took about 20 plus years to stumble into. Actually, we've known about big data for a very, very long time. It's just that we didn't have the computing facilities, the storage to work at that level. I'll give you big data from a very geeky perspective. My thesis in grad school was speech recognition. Right? Trying to figure out how not technical to be, using KD trees. Forget about what KD trees are, but using a certain model of computation. Right? And during those years, they were trying one model after the other, after the other, after the other. Actually, for the last 20 years, they've been doing that. Right? And the result was basically plus or minus the same. So Google, about 6-7 years ago, ran this Google Voice thing, right? Give you free voicemail and so on, text to speech, etc. Plus, text to speech, so on. Speech to text, actually. So that you could read your voicemail. What they were doing is, if you actually read the end user agreement, what they were doing is actually sampling their voice. Right? They had so much more data on human beings speaking than anybody in the history of humankind ever had. Right? So there's probably 3-4 orders of magnitude, any university. And it's no wonder that this thing has probably got the best speech recognition system in the world. So big data solves problems, some very, very real problems. Right? There is actually a big data company in Jakarta that is trying to solve yields for farmers, trying to solve all kinds of different things. So the biggest problem for entrepreneurs is, especially the geeks, is that they come up with a very nice architecture solution, but no one knows how to work it, how to use it. Right? So the result is there's no revenue model, and there's no revenue, so no start. So start with the problem. Don't start with the technology. My last company, I made that mistake. Start with the problem. Figure out what the market size is for the problem, and then figure out if you want to go for it.